Chapter 1. The Beginning. In the heart of an ancient, dense forest, nestled among towering pines and gnarled oaks, stood an abandoned hut. Locals whispered about it in hushed tones, claiming it was a place where darkness thrived, where shadows danced under the moonlight, and where the air was thick with an unsettling silence. Few dared to venture near, and those who did often returned with tales of ghostly apparitions and eerie sounds. Evelyn had always been a skeptic. A researcher of the paranormal, she spent her life debunking myths and exposing the truths behind supernatural legends. When she heard of the hut, she saw it as another opportunity to prove that science could explain even the most terrifying stories. Armed with her camera, audio equipment, and a notebook, she set off for the forest, determined to spend a week in the hut and document her findings. As she approached the forest, the trees seemed to close in around her, their branches intertwining like skeletal fingers. The path, once clear, became a twisted maze of roots and undergrowth. Evelyn pushed forward, her determination unwavering. She finally arrived at the clearing where the hut stood, its weathered wood and moss-covered roof a stark contrast to the vibrant greenery around it. The door creaked open as Evelyn pushed it, revealing a single room filled with old furniture, a fireplace, and a layer of dust thick enough to write in. She set up her equipment, feeling a chill despite the warmth of the afternoon sun. The air inside the hut was heavy, and every sound seemed amplified. The creak of the floorboards, the rustle of leaves outside, and her own breathing. As night fell, Evelyn lit a lantern and settled into a worn armchair. She wrote her observations in her notebook, noting the oppressive silence and the strange feeling of being watched. The first night was uneventful, save for a few creaks and groans from the old wood. Chapter 2. The First Night. Evelyn awoke to the sound of whispers. Groggy and disoriented, she glanced around the dark room, the lantern's light flickering weakly. The whispers seemed to come from all directions, a hushed chorus of unintelligible words. She grabbed her audio recorder and began documenting the phenomenon, her heart pounding in her chest. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. Evelyn strained to make out the words, but could only catch fragments. Leave, danger, not alone. She scanned the room, the shadows seeming to move and writhe. A cold breeze swept through the hut, extinguishing the lantern and plunging her into darkness. Frantically, Evelyn fumbled for her flashlight. When she finally managed to turn it on, the beam illuminated a figure standing in the corner of the room. It was a woman, her face pale and eyes hollow. She wore a tattered dress, and her hair hung in tangled strands. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat as the figure slowly lifted a hand, pointing towards the door. "Leave," the woman whispered, her voice barely audible over the pounding of Evelyn's heart. Evelyn blinked, and the figure was gone. She sat in stunned silence, trying to rationalize what she had seen. Exhaustion, she told herself. A trick of the light. She needed rest. She lay back down, though sleep was a long time coming. Chapter 3. The Haunting. The next day, Evelyn explored the forest surrounding the hut, hoping to clear her mind. The trees seemed to whisper as she passed, their leaves rustling in a way that sounded almost like voices. She found an old well, its stone walls crumbling and covered in moss. A chill ran down her spine as she peered into the darkness below. Returning to the hut, Evelyn reviewed the recordings from the previous night. The whispers were faint but unmistakable. She also caught something else, a low, growling sound that sent shivers down her spine. Determined to capture more evidence, she set up additional cameras and audio recorders. As night fell, the oppressive atmosphere returned. Evelyn sat in the armchair, her eyes darting around the room. The whispers began again, louder this time. She felt a presence behind her and turned to see the same woman from the night before, her eyes filled with sorrow and fear. "Why are you here?" Evelyn asked, her voice trembling. The woman's mouth moved, but no sound came out. She reached out a hand, and Evelyn felt an icy chill as their fingers touched. Images flashed in Evelyn's mind, a family, happy and laughing, living in the hut. Then darkness, screams, and blood. The woman pulled back, her eyes pleading. Before Evelyn could react, the woman vanished. The whispers turned into screams, filling the hut with a cacophony of terror. Evelyn grabbed her flashlight and ran outside, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The forest seemed to close in around her, the trees swaying menacingly. Chapter 4. The Revelation. Evelyn spent the day in the village, talking to the locals and gathering information about the hut. She learned that the woman she had seen was named Lillian, and she had lived in the hut with her husband and daughter many years ago. One night, a tragedy occurred. A group of men, thieves seeking shelter, had broken into the hut. In the struggle that followed, Lillian's family was killed, and she was left for dead. Lillian's spirit was said to haunt the hut, unable to find peace. Some believed that the forest itself was cursed, a place where evil lingered. Evelyn felt a pang of sympathy for Lillian, but was more determined than ever to uncover the truth. That night, she returned to the hut, armed with the knowledge of Lillian's story. She called out to the spirit, asking for her help in understanding what had happened. The air grew cold, and Lillian appeared once more. "Help me," Lillian whispered, her voice filled with anguish. Evelyn reached out, trying to communicate. "I want to help you find peace," she said softly. "Tell me what happened." Lillian's eyes filled with tears, and she began to speak. The story she told was one of horror and despair. The men who had attacked her family were not mere thieves. They were drawn to the hut by something darker, something that had awakened in the forest, a malevolent force that thrived on fear and pain. As Lillian spoke, the shadows in the hut seemed to grow darker, more sinister. Evelyn felt a presence, something ancient and evil, lurking just beyond the edges of the light. She realized that the hut was not just haunted by Lillian's spirit, but by something far more dangerous. Chapter 5. The Confrontation. Evelyn knew she had to confront the malevolent force if she was to help Lillian and escape the hut alive. She gathered her equipment and set up a circle of protection using salt and candles. The whispers returned, louder and more urgent, as if trying to warn her away. Lillian appeared once more, her face a mask of fear. "It's coming," she whispered. The air grew colder, and the shadows seemed to writhe and twist. Evelyn stood in the center of the circle, her heart pounding. She called out to the spirit, demanding that it show itself. A low growl filled the air, and a dark figure materialized before her. It was a shapeless mass of darkness, its eyes glowing red with malevolent intent. The temperature dropped further, and Evelyn could see her breath misting in the air. "You cannot harm me," Evelyn said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I know what you are." The figure laughed, a sound that chilled Evelyn to the bone. "You are nothing," it hissed. "A mortal, powerless against me." Evelyn reached into her bag and pulled out a vial of holy water. She had come prepared, knowing that she might face something beyond her understanding. She threw the water at the figure, and it shrieked in pain, the darkness retreating slightly. "You will not take her," Evelyn shouted. "You will not take any more lives." The figure roared, its form shifting and twisting. It lunged at her, but the circle of protection held. Evelyn chanted a prayer, her voice strong and unwavering. The figure howled in rage and pain, its form dissolving into smoke. Lillian's spirit appeared beside her, her face filled with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice soft and peaceful. Chapter 6. The Aftermath. The next morning, Evelyn awoke to find the hut bathed in sunlight. The oppressive atmosphere was gone, replaced by a sense of calm. She gathered her equipment and left the hut, feeling a sense of accomplishment and relief. As she walked through the forest, She noticed that the trees no longer seemed menacing. The air was fresh and filled with the sounds of birds and rustling leaves. Evelyn felt a sense of peace, knowing that she had helped a tormented soul find rest. Back in the village, the locals were amazed by her story. Some were skeptical, but many believed that the curse had been lifted. Evelyn documented her experience, knowing that it would be one of her most compelling cases. Though she left the village, the memory of the hut and Lillian's tragic story stayed with her. Evelyn continued her work, driven by a new understanding of the mysteries that lay beyond the veil of the ordinary. She knew that there were still many haunted places and restless spirits in the world, and she was determined to help them find peace. Epilogue. Years later, the hut still stood in the forest, but it was no longer a place of fear. The trees around it grew tall and strong, and the air was filled with the sounds of life. The locals no longer spoke of the hut in hushed tones, and some even ventured there to pay their respects to Lillian and her family. Evelyn's story became a legend, a tale of courage and compassion that inspired others to seek the truth behind the supernatural. And though the forest held its secrets, it was no longer a place of darkness, but a reminder that even in the most haunted places, there could be light.